The Discovery. The stellar horizon, pride of the Galactic Coalition's exploration fleet, drifted silently through the unmapped region of space known as the Veil Nebula. Its sleek hull gleamed under the light of distant stars, the vessel's quantum engines humming at minimal power as it conducted its survey mission. Commander Vextra stood on the observation deck, her four eyes scanning the swirling cosmic dust that gave the nebula its name. As a syntheri, she possessed both the analytical mind and spiritual curiosity that made her species excellent explorers. Her scaled skin shimmered with bioluminescent patterns that reflected her thoughtful mood. "Commander," the ship's communication system chirped. "Science Officer Pell requests your presence in the analysis lab immediately." Vextra sighed. Pell was brilliant but easily excited. "Is it urgent?" he said, and I quote, "It will rewrite galactic history as we know it." That was Pell's standard hyperbole for any new discovery, but Vextra had learned to trust his instincts. When she arrived at the lab, the avian scientist was frantically moving between holographic displays, his feathered crest fully extended in excitement. "We found something," Pell said without preamble, his beak clicking rapidly. "Buried within the nebula. It's not natural." The main display showed a massive structure partially obscured by cosmic dust. Its angular design spoke of artificial origin, with what appeared to be docking ports and communication arrays still intact despite obvious age. "How old?" Vextra asked, unable to hide her own fascination. "Initial scans suggest." Pell hesitated, checking his data again. "At least 3 million years." Vextra's bioluminescence flashed in shock. The Coalition, with its 27 member species, was considered ancient at just over 50,000 years old. Nothing in recorded history dated back that far. "Is it safe to approach?" "Sensors detect minimal power signatures. If any systems are still functioning, they're in deep hibernation mode." 2 days later, the stellar horizon had positioned itself alongside the ancient station. A team led by Vextra prepared to board, wearing environmental suits as a precaution. The docking procedure was surprisingly simple. The station's emergency systems responded to their approach automatically. "The architecture is unlike anything in our database," Security Chief Moore rumbled, his massive gelatinous form rippling with caution. As a Balkari, his species' collective memory spanned thousands of generations, yet even they had no record of such technology. As they moved through the dark corridors, emergency lighting activated in their presence. The air was thin but breathable, preserved by systems that had somehow maintained minimal functionality for eons. "These markings," said linguist Tala, her tentacles gently tracing symbols etched into the walls. "They don't match any known language patterns." They reached what appeared to be a control center. Dormant consoles lined the walls, covered in a fine layer of space dust. In the center stood a raised platform with a single terminal still showing a faint power signature. "Don't touch anything," Vextra ordered, but her warning came too late. Pell had already placed his taloned hand on the active console, his scientific curiosity overriding caution. The station shuddered beneath their feet. Lights flickered on throughout the control center as ancient systems surged to life. A voice echoed through the chamber, speaking in an unknown language. Before their translators could process it, the voice shifted, adapting to their own communication protocols. "Awakening sequence initiated. Standby for emergence protocol." Vextra grabbed Pell's arm. "What did you do?" "Nothing," the scientist protested. "I merely touched the interface." The floor beneath them vibrated as a section of the wall slid open, revealing a hidden chamber. Inside, a transparent pod stood upright, frost melting from its surface. Through the clearing glass, they could make out a Bictal figure. "By the 7 moons," whispered Tala. "Is that?" The pod hissed open. Steam billowed out as a figure stepped forward, unsteady at first, before finding its balance. She was Bictal, with smooth skin and facial features arranged in a configuration similar to several Coalition species, yet distinctly different. The being's eyes opened, focusing on the exploration team with startling intelligence. "How long?" the being asked, voice rough from disuse. Vextra stepped forward cautiously. "We don't understand." The being tilted its head, then spoke again, this time in perfect coalition standard. "Your communication devices are primitive but functional." I asked, "How long have we slept?" "This station appears to be approximately 3 million years old," Pell offered. The being closed its eyes briefly. 3 million. Much longer than planned. Opening its eyes again, she asked, "What species are you? What is your civilization called?" "We are representatives of the Galactic Coalition," Vextra replied. "I am Commander Vextra of the Zintheri. These are my colleagues from various member species." "Coalition," the being repeated. "No mention of humans in your title." "Interesting. Humans." Tala's translator produced the word with difficulty. "This term is unknown." The being smiled, an expression that revealed flat teeth. "I am Admiral Ilara Chen of the Human Defense Fleet, and you have just awakened the most powerful military force this galaxy has ever known." The exploration team fell silent. Humans were just myths, creatures of legend that appeared in the earliest historical records of several species, supposed builders of impossible technologies found scattered throughout the galaxy. No solid evidence of their existence had ever been confirmed. "Humans are not real," Moore stated flatly. "They are stories, nothing more." Admiral Chen's smile faded. "I assure you, we are very real. And now we are awake again." She glanced around the control room. "This is Outpost Sigma-7, a monitoring station designed to detect the return of our enemy. Your arrival has triggered the awakening protocol." As if to confirm her words, the station trembled more violently. Through the viewport, they saw massive engines igniting on the station's lower section, dormant for millennia, but now pulsing with energy. "What's happening?" Vextra demanded. "This outpost is reconnecting to the network," Chen explained. "Even now, similar stations across the galaxy are activating. The fleet is awakening." "What fleet?" Pell asked, his scientific curiosity overriding fear. Ken's face grew solemn. "When our civilization faced extinction, we created a contingency plan. 10,000 warships and their crews entered stasis, hidden throughout the galaxy. We would sleep until needed again." "Needed for what purpose?" Vextra asked, though something in her dreaded the answer. "To fight the void," Chen replied. "An enemy from beyond the galaxy's edge. They consume entire star systems, converting matter to energy to sustain their existence. We fought them to a stalemate but couldn't defeat them. Our scientists calculated they would return in approximately 500,000 years. Yet you slept for 3 million, Tala observed. "A miscalculation, or perhaps sabotage. We're still assessing." Chen moved to the central console, placing her hand on its surface. Displays lit up around her, showing star charts of the galaxy. Thousands of points of light began blinking on throughout the spiral arms. "Those are more stations," Pell whispered. "They're everywhere. And battleships, research facilities, defense platforms," Chen added. "All awakening now." On the stellar horizon, Captain Jorn received an urgent transmission from Coalition Command. "Captain, we're detecting massive energy signatures across the galaxy. Ancient structures are activating everywhere." "How many?" Jorn asked, mandibles clicking with concern. "Thousands, and Captain, some of them are moving." Back on the station, Vextra watched as Admiral Chen accessed more systems. The human's fingers moved with practiced efficiency despite her long sleep. "Why should we believe this threat exists?" Vextra asked. "We have no evidence beyond your claims." Chen paused, then gestured to a secondary console. "Access your coalition records. Look for unexplained stellar phenomena. Stars that disappeared without going nova. Systems that show gravitational anomalies without visible mass." Pell moved to the console, connecting his personal device to the alien interface. After several minutes of searching, he looked up, his feathers flat against his head in distress. There are dozens of such incidents in our astronomical records. We've never had a satisfactory explanation for them. Those are the Void's feeding grounds, Chen said quietly, places they've already visited during their long journey toward the galactic core. Your civilization has been fortunate. They've been at the fringes, conserving energy. But they're coming now, drawn by the concentrated life and energy of your coalition worlds. Vextra felt cold despite the environmental suit. If what you say is true, what happens next? Chen straightened, her bearing suddenly that of a military commander rather than a disoriented survivor. First, I need to make contact with other awakened outposts. Then we must speak with your coalition leadership. There is much to prepare and precious little time. The Coalition Council will not simply accept the sudden appearance of an ancient military force in our territory, Vextra warned. They will when they understand what's coming, Chen replied. As if to emphasize her point, the station's weapons systems began to power up, ancient turrets rotating and locking into ready positions. The human admiral looked at the frightened exploration team, her expression softening slightly. You need not fear us. We were once the guardians of this galaxy, and we shall be again. Across the galaxy, the leaders of the coalition watched in growing alarm as more ancient human structures activated. No one knew what to do about the return of a species that had been considered mythical, a species whose technology, even after 3 million years, far outmatched anything the coalition possessed. The galaxy trembled, not knowing whether these returning humans were saviors or conquerors. The Awakening. Supreme Chancellor Nyx stared at the holographic display, her crystalline form refracting light in patterns that reflected her agitation. The Coalition Council chamber, normally a place of measured debate, had descended into near chaos. We cannot stand by while these humans deploy military assets throughout our territory, thundered Councillor Brack, his armored exoskeleton clattering as he pounded the table. Neither can we oppose them if their technological superiority is as great as reported, countered Councillor Elin, her voice carrying the harmonics of her aquatic species. Chancellor Nyx, a communications officer, interrupted. The Stellar Horizon is requesting permission to dock at Central Station. They've brought a guest. An hour later, Chancellor Nyx found herself face to face with Admiral Ilara Chen. The human stood calmly before the full Coalition Council, seemingly unbothered by being the focus of 27 different species scrutiny. We appreciate your willingness to meet with us, Nyx began formally. Though I must express the Council's concern regarding the unauthorized activation of military installations throughout Coalition space. Chen nodded. I understand your concern. From your perspective, we appear without warning or invitation. However, this galaxy was under human protection long before your coalition existed. A protection that apparently ended 3 million years ago, Brack interjected. By what right do you claim authority now? By right of necessity, Chen replied evenly. The Void is returning. You've seen Commander Vextra's report and the astronomical data. The signs are there for those who know how to interpret them. She gestured, and a holographic projection appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a spiral galaxy, their galaxy, with thousands of small points of light blinking across its arms. Each of these points represents a human installation now reactivating. Outposts, defense platforms, and warships, all designed specifically to combat the Void. What exactly is this Void? Asked Councillor Elin. Your explanation has been vague. Chen's expression darkened. They exist partially in another dimension. They feed on matter and energy from our universe, converting it to sustain their existence. They consumed 17 star systems before we developed effective weapons against them. She manipulated the hologram, zooming to the galaxy's edge. Strange distortions appeared, like ripples in space itself. These are recent readings from our reactivated long-range sensors. The Void's advanced scouts have already entered the galaxy. We estimate their main force will arrive within 6 months. Murmurs spread through the council chamber. Nyx raised a crystalline hand for silence. Even if we accept your claims, Admiral, how do you propose we proceed? The Coalition has no experience with this enemy. Integration of our forces is the most logical approach, Chen replied. Human technology was specifically designed to combat the Void. We have weapons that can affect their partial dimensional state. However, we lack knowledge of the current galaxy, political boundaries, population centers, strategic resources. We need the Coalition's infrastructure and intelligence. And after this threat is dealt with, Brack demanded. What then? Will your human defense fleet simply stand down? Chen met his gaze steadily. Humans were the guardians of this galaxy once. We never abandoned that responsibility. We merely slept. What happens after depends largely on how we work together now. As debates continued in the council chamber, activity throughout the galaxy accelerated. More human ships and stations activated daily. The Coalition population watched with mixed emotions as massive warships moved into defensive positions throughout Coalition space. On the human flagship Everest, Admiral Chen met with her senior staff, all recently awakened from stasis. The Coalition remains skeptical, she informed them, but they granted us provisional operating authority within their space. They don't have much choice, remarked Commander Sato, her tactical officer. Our long-range sensors have confirmed void activity in 6 different sectors already. The real challenge will be coordination, said Dr. Marcus, chief scientist. The Coalition military has never faced an enemy like the Void. Their weapons and tactics will be useless. Then we'll have to teach them, Chen decided. I want liaison officers assigned to every major Coalition fleet. Share what information we can without compromising security. Meanwhile, at Coalition Science Directorate, Pell worked alongside other researchers studying human technology. The avian scientist couldn't contain his excitement as he examined a deactivated human weapon. The phase shift technology is revolutionary, he explained to his colleagues. It doesn't just damage the target, it partially shifts it into our dimension, making it vulnerable to conventional attacks. Lead engineer Cora, a mechanoid, analyzed the weapon's power source. This energy signature doesn't match anything in our database. It's like they've harnessed a fundamental force we haven't even discovered yet. That's exactly what we did, said a voice from the doorway. A human scientist named Dr. Rice entered the lab. We call it quantum folding, manipulating the boundary between dimensions. Back in Coalition space, the first encounters with Void Scouts had already begun. A Coalition patrol fleet encountered strange anomalies near the Orion Spur. Before they could report, 3 ships vanished, seemingly erased from existence. The remaining vessel barely escaped to tell the tale. Chancellor Nix called an emergency session of the Coalition Defense Council. Admiral Chen attended via hologram from the Everest, which was moving to intercept the Void incursion. They're testing our defenses, Chen explained, learning our capabilities before committing their main force. And what is their main force? Asked Fleet Admiral Czar, Supreme Commander of Coalition Forces. Chen displayed tactical projections. Based on our historical data and current readings, we estimate between 50 and 75 major Void entities, each capable of consuming an entire planet. They're accompanied by thousands of smaller entities that serve as scouts and defense mechanisms. By the ancients, someone whispered. The irony that the humans were those very ancients wasn't lost on anyone present. How do we fight such things? Czar demanded. With this, Chen replied, the hologram shifting to show a massive weapon being assembled in orbit around a gas giant in the Cygnus arm. The dimensional anchor. It will force the Void entities fully into our dimension, making them vulnerable to our phase shift weapons. The power requirements must be enormous, Nix observed. Chen nodded. We'll need access to at least 3 of your stellar harvesters. Those power Coalition worlds, objected a counselor. Without this weapon, there won't be any worlds to power, Chen countered. While the Coalition leadership debated, humanity's ancient defense network continued to awaken. Deep in the galactic core, a massive shipyard stirred to life. automated systems beginning repairs on vessels damaged before their long sleep. In the Sagittarius Arm, defense platforms the size of small moons activated their weapon systems, running diagnostics on technologies that had lain dormant for millions of years. On worlds throughout Coalition space, archaeological digs that had long puzzled researchers suddenly made sense. The strange artifacts, the inexplicable technologies, all were pieces of humanity's legacy, left behind when they entered their long sleep. But not all humans had slept. Admiral Chen received a surprising report from a scout ship in the Outer Rim. "We found them, Admiral, descendants of the Watch." The Watch had been volunteers who remained awake, generation after generation, to monitor for the Void's return. Over millions of years, they had changed, adapting to different environments, evolving into forms their ancestors would barely recognize. Yet they had preserved the most crucial knowledge, passing it down through the ages. On a small planetoid near the Perseus Arm, Chen met with representatives from these changed human groups. Their appearance varied wildly. Some aquatic, others adapted for high gravity or toxic atmospheres. But they all recognized the awakened fleet as their ancestral protectors. "We kept the vigil," said Elder Kaya, her translucent skin revealing the complex nervous system beneath. "When your sensors failed to awaken you at the appointed time, we tried to reactivate the network. But the technology was beyond our capability." "You did what you could," Chen assured her. "And you preserved the knowledge of the Void. Without that, the galaxy would be defenseless." As Chen departed the meeting, Commander Sato approached with urgent news. "Admiral, long-range sensors have detected a major dimensional disturbance at the galaxy's edge. It's them, the main Void force. They've arrived early." Chen's face hardened. "Alert Coalition Command. All awake vessels to combat stations. It's time to see if 3 million years of sleep has dulled our edge." The human flagship Everest moved to intercept, joined by a Coalition battle group. As they approached the disturbance, sensors went haywire, unable to process the reality warping effects of the Void's presence. "Visual confirmation," reported the sensor officer, voice tight with tension. On the main screen appeared a nightmarish sight, a tear in space itself, darkness seeping through like ink in water. Around it, stars seemed to bend, their light distorted as reality itself warped. Through the tear came shapes that defied description, existing partially in our dimension and partially beyond. "All ships, maintain formation," Chen ordered. "Charge phase shift weapons. Prepare to deploy dimensional anchors." On the Coalition flagship Stalwart Defender, Fleet Admiral Czar watched with a mixture of fear and awe. "By all that's sacred," he whispered, "the humans were right." As the Void entities detected the approaching fleet, they changed course, moving with impossible speed toward the nearest inhabited system. "They're heading for Bellis Prime," Sato reported. "Population 4 billion. Chen's decision was immediate. "All ships, maximum speed. We need to intercept before they reach the system." She turned to communications, warned Bellis Prime. "Full evacuation protocols." The Everest surged forward, its ancient engines demonstrating power that dwarfed modern Coalition technology. The rest of the fleet struggled to keep pace as humanity's flagship raced to place itself between the Void and its prey. "We'll only get one shot at this," Chen told her crew. "The dimensional anchor must be perfectly calibrated. Once deployed, we'll have minutes at most before they adapt." On Bellis Prime, panic spread as evacuation orders were issued. Millions crowded spaceports, desperate to escape the approaching doom. Coalition vessels of all types, from military cruisers to civilian transports, moved into orbit, taking on as many refugees as their life support systems could handle. The human fleet reached position just as the Void entities entered the system. The Everest deployed the dimensional anchor, a massive construct that began to glow with unearthly energy as it powered up. "All ships, prepare to engage," Chen ordered. "Remember your training. These entities feed on energy. Conventional weapons only make them stronger. Wait for the anchor to force them into our dimension, then target with phase-shift weapons only. The void entities sensed the trap. They tried to retreat, but the anchor's field expanded rapidly, catching the leading entities in its effect. For the first time in Coalition history, the void became visible in all its horror. Vast, writhing masses of darkness shot through with veins of cold light. Now, Chen commanded. The human fleet opened fire with weapons that bent reality itself. Beams of quantum-folded energy struck the void entities, forcing them further into normal space. The creatures released soundless screams that nonetheless echoed in the minds of all who witnessed the battle. Coalition vessels, equipped with hastily modified weapons based on human technology, joined the assault. For heart-stopping minutes, the outcome hung in balance as the void entities fought back, tendrils of non-existence reaching for the attacking ships. Then the lead entity collapsed, its partial existence failing as it was forced fully into a dimension it could not survive in. The others began to retreat, pulling back from the anchor's influence. "They're running," Sato reported, disbelief in her voice. "For now," Chen replied grimly. "This was just their vanguard. The main force will be more cautious after this defeat, but they'll return. They must feed." In the aftermath of the battle, the Coalition Council chamber was subdued. The recordings of the void entities had been enough to silence even the most skeptical voices. "It seems we owe the human fleet our gratitude," Chancellor Nix acknowledged. "Without your intervention, Bellis Prime would have been lost." Admiral Chen nodded in acceptance. This was only the beginning. The void will return in greater numbers, with new tactics. We need to accelerate the awakening of our remaining vessels and defense platforms. "You shall have the Coalition's full cooperation," Nix assured her. "Our resources are at your disposal." As the human fleet and the Coalition began their preparations for the larger conflict to come, stories spread throughout the galaxy. Tales of the ancient human defenders returned from myth to protect all sentient life once more.